Welcome back, guys. And before we look at review your homework, I just want to go over the prompt again. So the prompt, the letter below, was written by Samuel Johnson in response to a woman who had asked him to obtain the Archbishop of Canterbury's patronage to have her son sent to the university. Read the letter carefully, then write an essay in which you analyze how Johnson crafts his denial of the woman's request. And yesterday we talked about how if we were able to identify each of these elements of a rhetorical situation as we're reading the passage, it'll help lead to a more complex analysis of the text, since that was the common issue many of you faced when trying to do the FRQ for the rhetorical analysis passage. So your assignment for last night was to read the passage and identify the elements of a rhetorical situation. And so today we're going to look at the first paragraph of the passage. And when we're reading the passage and we identify a specific example that we think will work well in analyzing a rhetorical situation, these are the questions that you want to ask about each element of the rhetorical situation. These questions are taken directly from the College Board YouTube streaming site where they went over the Abigail Adams piece. So these are the questions. We will go over them. For the writer, what does example suggest about the writer's values, beliefs, and needs? For the audience, what does this example suggest about the audience's values, beliefs, and needs? And very important to ask or to consider, why might it be persuasive? For the message, how does this example relate to the writer's message, and what does it illuminate about the subject? For the purpose, how does this example relate to the writer's purpose? How does it contribute to the purpose? And then for the exigence, what does this example illuminate about why the text was written? And for the context, why does this example illuminate, what does this example illuminate about the time in which the text was written? And the idea here is that when you identify a good example from a passage, you want to have these questions ready to go from the top of your head, right? And it might be difficult due to the length of the questions, so I try to shorten them. So this is a shorter version. It's the same questions as up here, but truncated. And so hopefully this will be easier to just remember off the top of your head. For the writer and audience, we're looking at values, beliefs, or needs, what the example might reveal about those things for the writer and the audience. And for the audience, why might it be persuasive? For the message, how does it relate or give insight to the writer's message? For the purpose, how does it relate or contribute to the writer's purpose? And for exigence and context, what insight does the example give about the exigence and the context? So when we look at the first paragraph, I highlighted parts of this last sentence. And that's what we're going to be looking at and trying to address for the six elements of the rhetorical situation. Before we get to that, the beginning, uh, the second sentence, he identifies that hope and expectations, if there's too much of it, or if it's improper, uh, that one will be disappointed. That expectations improperly indulged must end in disappointment. And in this last sentence, he expands on that. What is improper expectation, which it is dangerous to indulge? It is such expectations as is dictated not by reason, but by desire. Expectation raised not by the common occurrences of life, but by the wants of the expectant, an expectation that requires the common course of things to be changed and the general rules of action to be broken. So when we're considering these questions, we want to see how the elements of the rhetorical situation connect to this example. So what does this say about the writer's values, beliefs, or needs? So that's where we'll start. So this passage, it communicates what the writer Samuel Johnson values. He values reasoned thinking, that it's dangerous to have improper expectations led by desire rather than reason, right? But by desire and not by reason. Oh, not by reason. There it is. For the audience, what does this reveal about the audience's beliefs or needs? It implies that the mother's request is led by desire over logic. That's what led her kind of improper expectation and hope. And why might this be persuasive? If you look at how the writer frames the idea, Johnson doesn't directly address the mother and say that this is your thinking. It's saying that in general, if someone were to have an improper expectation, this is why that might be dangerous. So this indirectly identifying the flaw of this thinking of desire over logic. So it would lessen the blow and the criticism that the writer is making of the audience. For the message, it begins to hint at his denial of request. You'll see in this first paragraph, he doesn't directly say, "No, I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not going to honor your request." But he begins to hint at that. And this goes back to why that might be persuasive also, is that indirect beginning, by beginning to hint at the denial rather than directly say it right out, it makes it easier for the audience, the mother, to accept. For the purpose, how does this relate or contribute to the writer's purpose? This explanation begins to establish why he's denying the mother's request. Uh, the what he elaborates here is that it goes against logic and reason, and that's why he can't honor the request. It also helps to persuade the mother his response is not mean-spirited or dismissive. Right? He wants to make sure that the mother knows that uh, he's not denying the request because he just doesn't want to help the mom. Right? That it's not a personal reason, it's because it's illogical. And for exigence, there's not too much there. Inside, I guess it addresses the issue of the request, which is why he's writing it. And and also for context, there's really not much there in terms of what insight it gives about the time in which the text is written. Uh, Something to look at for context is language. If the language hints at the time in which the text is written, or specific allusions, or implied social norms. So those are some things that you might want to look at for if you're looking for context. So this is going from here. You can begin to see how you can begin to develop a more complex understanding of why the language is persuasive, right? And so I want you to try to do this for paragraph 2. And we're going to look to simplify things. We're just going to look at the writer, audience, and purpose. Because sometimes some of the passages might not directly connect with context exigence, or say much anything interesting about the message. But in most cases, you'll be able to address writer, audience, or purpose. So for paragraph 2, I want you to expand or answer the 3 questions for a writer, audience, and purpose for 2 examples. This first one, you ask me to solicit a great man to whom I never spoke, for a young person whom I never seen, upon a supposition which I had no means of knowing to be true. So that one. And then the second one, I know, madam, how unwillingly conviction is admitted when interest opposes it. But surely, madam, you must allow that there is no reason why that should be done by me, which every other man may do with equal reason. This second one, make sure you understand what he is saying in these 2 parts. How unwillingly conviction is admitted when interest opposes it, and then the second part, that there is no reason why that should be done by me, which every other man may do with equal reason. So make sure you understand what the passage is saying before you answer these questions. So for Monday or Sunday night, I think that's when I put the assignment due date. I want you to answer these questions. The assignment is on Schoology. You'll see a separate document where you can type in the answers, and then on Monday we'll go over this. All right, that's it. Have a good weekend.